Hey future managers, welcome to Planning Week. I just wanted to share this quick verse with you guys before we get started today. It says, commit to the Lord whatever you do, and He will establish your plans. I love this because it really helps us think about, we're going to talk about planning and making plans for our life, plans for our team, plans for the business we're going to work for. But you know what? If we don't take time to kind of take a step back and then give our plans and what we want to see do to God and kind of filter them through, is what I'm doing going to be honoring or pleasing to God? He's the one who's going to be establishing our steps and making our plans happen. So it's very prudent of us, and also, to acknowledge God, His power in our lives, and His power to make our plans happen. So commit whatever you do to the Lord, and He will establish your plans or establish your steps, some other versions say. So hopefully you guys had a chance to watch the Zappos video. Zappos is an amazing company. They have an amazing company culture. But you know what? That culture did not happen by accident. I love it when a good plan comes together, and Zappos is a great idea of that. None of the things that Zappos has done have been very successful. They're industry leading. They have fantastic retention of their employees. A lot of people want to go work for them. And it's because they take care of their people and they treat them well. That didn't happen by accident. That required a lot of planning. All right, so we're going to talk about the planning process today. Zappos is an example of company culture, but we use planning actually to think about our culture. It doesn't necessarily just happen by accident. They're very intentional about who they hire into their company and what they're going to kind of bring to the team. But also, planning is helpful in all areas of business. When we think about our competition or our marketing plan or our supply chain in my background. So planning is something that all managers do, both personally and professionally. All right, so let's start talking about participatory planning. So first thing I want to say is planning is not something you as a manager should do alone. All right, you should not be working alone to create your plans. You need to be working together with a team. All right, so these are the 5 main sets of participatory planning you guys need to necessarily know. All right, so the very first one is plan your objectives. All right, what is it we're trying to accomplish? All right, so 1, define objectives. What is it we're trying to accomplish? What is the business trying to accomplish? What are our values? What is our mission? And then how do our plans for the future correlate to those mission and vision and values? All right, that's the very first thing we need to think about. What are our objectives and how do these plans relate to them? So, for example, I worked at General Electric for a lot of years. We always said that we would be involved with any company, we would be number 1 or number 2 in the world. We didn't want to go in and be number 3. We didn't want to be number 4, number 5. We didn't want to start a new business. We wanted to go in and be number 1 or number 2. If we couldn't be that, we would sell the business. And that was a kind of a hard line, but that was what Jack Welch, the old CEO of GE, used to say. Can you be number 1 or number 2? And he'd only say number 2 because then he thought he had the opportunity to overtake the number 1 and become number 1 or buy them out or something. All right, so we're not going to be number 1 or number 2. We're going to get out. All right, so that was something that was always kind of part of the planning process at all the different GE businesses. All right. The second part of it is determining where things stand vis-a-vis in relation to our objectives. So if I'm looking at a company, and maybe we had started off number 2, but you know what? Maybe we slipped to number 3. That's not good. So if we say, hey, we're looking to be number 3 in this industry this year. So for example, I think about the light bulb industry. I didn't work in the light bulb industry, but I know people that did. So they worked for GE light bulbs. They were starting to slip to number 3, especially as some of the new LED technologies came out. And they were like, man, we're not going to be number 1 or 2. That's not a good sign for us. And so then they said, hey, listen, we need to recognize that this LED thing is not going to go away. We're not going to see the old-fashioned light bulbs where, you have the 2 little metal things, there's a little wire that connects them, the old school kind from when you guys were a kid. All right? They recognize, hey, we're not going to go back to that style. All right, everything's going to be LED in the future. We really need to kind of catch up to the curve and get ahead of the curve with LED light bulbs. And so they started developing whole new technologies. And again, I'm not a light bulb expert, but they look at like hydrogen filled and all these kinds of really cool things. They started to recognize this is the way that the lighting industry is going, and we need to get on board. All right, so you're developing a premise regarding future conditions. They said we may be number 3 now, but with our plans, we're going to be number 1 or number 2 with this new technology that we're developing. So that's kind of one of the cool things. So for step 1, define planning objectives. Step 2, determine where you stand. I'm going to say present state. And then third, premise regarding future conditions. What are we going to be doing in the future? Those are the questions, all right? So they said, okay, we're going to see this new technology. From there, you move to step 4, and I kind of hinted at it already. You're going to identify your action plan, alternatives, and start making plans around your action plan. They said, we need a new technology that's going to help set us above this current LED to doing really powerful, low energy use, sustainable lighting product. All right, so you're going to identify an action plan. But number 4 is 2-pronged, okay? I also want to say you want to make alternatives because nobody knows what the future holds, all right? So you need to think about multiple scenarios about what could happen in the future. Hey, you know what? We totally went to LED, but I believe that under our current president, I believe that he made it so we can go back to getting the cheap light bulbs again, and that opened a whole new sector for manufacturing. That was something that a lot of lighting companies hadn't planned for. But you know what? GE had that old technology, and so you have to make a lot of alternatives, saying, hey, nobody knows what the future holds, so we have to plan for scenario A, scenario B, scenario C. If we're going LED, we're going to go for the really, really nice LEDs that nobody else is doing with brand new technology. Or we're going to also keep the technology around, or the manufacturing equipment, to be able to make the really, really cheap ones in case we go back. You have to be able to just prepare your business for wherever the environment around you is going, all right? And then last is when you implement your plans. Again, this is going to be 2-pronged as well. So I'm going to write 5 implement plans. Man, my marker is squeaky today, and I like it. Okay, so implement plans, all right? Put those plans into action. Hey, you know what? We're going to go 2-pronged. We're going to keep the technology to do the old-fashioned light bulbs, but we're also going to start working on this new hydrogen technology as well, which they've rolled out and has become very successful, and they've got a bunch of other routes as well. But you put those plans into action, preparing yourself for multiple scenarios. But here's the key part. This is what I think where I've seen a lot of businesses go wrong. They don't always come back around and say, evaluate their results. And that's really, really powerful because that's where you get your lessons learned and you can move into something called continuous improvement, which we learned a little bit as part of modern management under Deming. Yeah, flashback to chapter 2, right? So you always want to say, hey, what can I do better next time? So maybe, in the short term, those plans are working really well. Now they need to reevaluate and say, okay, now how do we do our long-term plans, now that it's been a couple of years? We're living in an environment where people want the really, really nice LEDs, and some people really want the old school style light bulb too. And so what part of our business, how do we position ourselves if we want to be number 1 or number 2 to be able to serve both markets? And those are kinds of things that we start to think about as we do planning. But you know what? It's not up to managers by themselves. You want to be consulting with people from all areas of the business, thinking about, look at the teams that are working with the customers. Look at what the supplies for the different items are costing, what the development of new technology is. The development to be able to make these things can be a whole big technology purchase. Being able to have the space, hiring employees, all these things are things that you have to kind of consider. So you have to pull in experts from all different areas of the business to help you decide, hey, what kind of light bulb are we going to make? Because at the end of the day, we have to keep in mind, we have to be number 1 or number 2. And so we need to make some plans on how to get there. So that's participatory planning, 5 steps. Quick example of the light bulb. One more thing I want to share with you guys out of your chapter is this whole planning improves coordination and control kind of thing. All right, so we talked about the whole hierarchical pyramid in the past. All right, we talked about how top manager, middle manager, front line or first line manager, and then you have the worker bees. That's kind of the historical, and then we talked about how it's flipped upside down now, and customers are at the top, the upside down pyramid. But when it comes to this whole planning thing, it really is more of a hierarchical pyramid. So make sure you write this down, and I want you to kind of think about it as you're thinking through the planning. And we'll talk more about this a little bit more when we get to goal setting. It's just really important when we're setting up our planning that we're recognizing, this is coming back to Polk, and Polk goes back to Fayol, You guys never fail. Whoa, yeah, like you were talking way too much about chapter 2, Professor Morrell. We were on a new day. I get it. All right, but planning is the first stage of polk. All right. Man, I wish you guys could see all this. All right, polk up here. I wish you guys could see that better. I wish the lighting was better, but here we are. Okay, planning is going to help improve coordination and control. So I want you guys to remember there is a major tie between planning and control. And I kind of alluded to it a little bit when we got to step 5 before, but I want you guys to put a little arrow between the P and the C, okay? Because the better we plan, the better we're going to be able to control our results. So, remember back here? Oh, going backwards. Evaluate results. That comes back to the control factor, so we can do continuous improvement. Because if we're trying to improve our coordination and control, it's really going to pay off for us for the next business cycle. All right? So it's going to help us coordinate better, organize better, lead better, and then be able to control better for the next step. Okay. All right. I'm going to erase things on the board. I'm just going to leave all this up here. We're going to talk about polk again, the C, control, at the very end of the course. So after this planning week, we're going to be moving right into organizing and leading, and then at the very end we'll come back in control. But what I don't want you to forget is planning and control always have a tie. Because once you get your control factors and you say, hey, maybe we missed our deadline, we can come back around and make new plans for the next year, the next business cycle, to help us plan better so we can meet our goals for the next year. So recognize there's a really strong tie between coordination and control. Okay, all right, so plan is control, so you can measure your success. So this is kind of the hierarchy of objectives. So every organization has a mission and a purpose, and I'm going to talk to you guys more about, I really want you guys to be able to work for businesses one day where your personal mission and vision can align with that of the companies. All right, so that's kind of one of my ambitions for you. All right, but if you think about what your mission and purpose is, that should also drive down from all the way down from the top level of management all the way to the lower level of management. So I gave you guys the example of the light bulb. Let's take this through also the hierarchy of objectives. So if our mission and purpose is to say, we want to power the world, all right? Well, part of powering the world was having the lighting industry, and so it all kind of went up under the energy umbrella for a while. I think it's split off. But anyhow, long story short, if you say your mission, we're out there to power the world, we're an energy company, you know, lighting is also part of that as well. We've done some really cool projects, man. They like brought power for the first time, like up to like Mongolia, like way up in the mountains, like 13,000 feet or whatever. And they brought light bulbs to a little village for the first time. They made a video of it. It was the coolest thing. Anyway, all right, quick little side thing. But it was just really cool to see them for the very first time, like light up, you know, a string of lights in their house, and just like the joy on these villagers' faces, you know, that were just had worked, and they were like a hurting tribal community. It was really cool. I mean, some places in the world still don't have electricity, so it's cool. So there's still those kinds of goals that are out there. All right, but overall, that's your mission and purpose of the organization. All right, top management objective. We talked about it last. Maybe that is to be top 1 or 2 in all the energy companies that we're going to be a part of. Lighting is one of them. All right, that's a top management objective. Senior managers then have to figure out, okay, maybe we need to think about, you know, the new technologies, or need to think about new directions, and figure out kind of where we're going to be dividing our people, dividing the time that we're spending, and spinning off new technologies. That's a senior management kind of objective. Middle manager is trying to figure out, okay, listen, I have to ramp up, that's kind of where I was in supply chain, I have to ramp up production of this brand new hydrogen kind of light bulb, and I have to ramp down this traditional one, but we don't want to get rid of it altogether. And so middle managers try to figure out, how do I balance the workload of things coming through my shop? How do I balance how many supplies do I order, from who do I order them from, you know, and how do I price these kinds of things, you know, so we can stay number 1 or number 2 in the market, because you have to meet those top managerial objectives, you know. And so there's all the things that middle managers have to come up with, and your team leader is trying to say, listen, I got to make sure I have the right people that have the right skill set, that are coming to work every day, that know how to do their job, that can get me the output that I need to make my middle manager goal. And so it all kind of feeds up. It's a hierarchical kind of thing. And can you believe it's about something as simple as a light bulb that all of this planning comes into place? You know? And so it's something your plans are never done. You're always tweaking it. You're always realigning it. But it's really kind of a cool process to keep in mind. So you're just thinking about it all the way up. And you know, it does the exact same thing when you're doing it working with your employees or you're doing planning for yourself. I'll talk about this more in goal setting, but you're always going to be thinking about, you know, how is, my individual actions aligning with my purpose or maybe my dreams or my goals of what I want for the future. You should always be thinking about, you know, I think for myself, you know, what is it God made me for? What is it He made me to do? You know, and those are the things that kind of help guide me through all the different activities of going to my MBA and getting my doctorate, you know, because I had to start thinking about what is it that God made me do. So personally, that's something that I believe in that helped kind of shape and guide me. You have to ask those questions for yourself and then think about what activities, what planning you need to make at all different levels to get you there. So it's a managerial principle, both for self-management and also business management. Go ahead and check out the next video. We'll talk about some goals.